Hi. And I'm apologizing ahead of time if the bird is a little squawky. He's usually pretty quiet, but I'm Roselle, and today we're going to be talking about creating a safe haven at home and what that's all about for people with mast cell issues and mast cell activation disorders. And first, a little bit about me. I'm in the United States. I'm in Boston, in Massachusetts, and I'm currently in school doing my PhD and focusing on mast cell activation issues and disorders with that. I'm a licensed mental health counselor. I'm a licensed nurse. I have all these credentials. I have MCAS myself. So when I'm sharing, it's what I know and what I've experienced. It's all part of it. Again, this is more things that I have, and you will be receiving the PowerPoint as a PDF, so you'll have all of this information. I think they're going to email it to you afterwards if you haven't received it already. So more of the things that what I do, and my websites to reach and contact me. I do specialize in working with mast cell activation issues and disorders with people as a therapist and a case manager, and through the creative arts and the life, all of these areas, whatever people need supports, because it's so individualized always what people need. I do what I can to help. I like to help. What's the point of going through something if you can't turn around and help somebody else? So today, in looking at how to create a kind of a safe haven at home, this presentation is 3 sections. First is basic foundational information just about mast cells, which probably you already know about, but it's just, starting, so we're all starting on the same page and taking a look at what home is about for us, and then ideas and strategies for creating that safe space, that safe haven at home. I like this particular quote. It's, "Do not let the behavior of others destroy your inner peace." Mostly because in so much of what we do and how our days are spent and how we navigate them, it's very much about being at the mercy of the behaviors of other people over which we have no control. And that's a big factor in our homes, creating those safe spaces in our living quarters, in the worlds where we go to retreat and feel better, tries, but it's especially that it says to not destroy your inner peace, because that's, aside from it, affecting stress levels and affecting mast cell activation, we need to stay kind of in that space of ourselves, even though these things are happening, that we can manage our little Zen zone. I like thinking of it like a Zen zone. Anyway, so in brief about mast cells. Mast cells are a type of white blood cell. They're found in the connective tissue throughout the whole body. They're in every organ system, everywhere, including your brain. They're part of our body's immune response and the body's inflammatory response. So they are communicating with every cell in our body, giving information, getting information, sharing, getting cells to respond to what they think may be dangers or threats, because that's kind of what they're all about, is to protect our bodies from any perceived danger or threat that the mast cells may think is occurring inside of us. This is connected what they are and what they do. So some of the specific things that they do: they regulate blood pressure, they regulate wound healing, they regulate the inflammatory response. They're involved with, when they're activated, with every single reaction that we feel is being not just occurring because of the mast cell activation, but it's also just regulated by it. And even though these systems are set up for good, it's to protect our bodies. With the mast cell activation disorder, they've gone a little haywire. The messages are they're behaving badly, and the messages aren't being sent with the right information. We hear a lot reactions and triggers and reactions. So reactions, which I'm sure you know, are the specific symptoms a person experiences when they've been exposed to whatever toxic chemical or substance or environment that they react to, that they will have symptoms. So there are so many symptoms and so many reactions. These are just some of the most common ones, but people are experiencing all of them all the time. Dizziness, agitation, cognitive impairments. Lately, it's been called brain fog, but it includes things like having memory issues, word retrieval problems, suddenly being in a familiar neighborhood and being completely lost and having no idea where you are. They can be mild to profound, the degree of the impairment, and it's not always the same what happens. There can be flu-like symptoms. People can have swollen glands and swollen lymph nodes, and feel quite ill, but not have an infection or a virus or a bacterial thing going on. These are reactions to mast cell activation. The diarrhea, nausea, vomiting. There's syncope. There's the whole shebang is and more. This was just, I think sometimes it helps to see it written down that what we're experiencing is real, it's documented, it's physical, it's known, and you haven't like lost your mind over it. Or it's not emotional or psychological. These are physical, real things that are happening. And the triggers are just as many as the reactions themselves. And they are just as individualized, and it can be pesticides, plastics, and plastics are everywhere in so many different forms. They're fabrics, they're in paints, they're in glue and adhesives, they're in Scotch tape, and plastics are just, we live in a plastic universe, and exhaust fumes. And this is, again, this isn't everything. This is just a lot of the most common things. Then some maybe we don't always realize, like cooking spices and fruits ripening and foods, ripening, and that can be a trigger itself. And so these are, I'm kind of moving through them a little bit with thinking that you can take time looking them over and checking and thinking, okay, what are any of these triggers for me? Because really the most important focus with all of this about creating a safe haven and with getting through our days is being able to understand our triggers, our reactions, what's causing them, what it could be to help us better navigate our world. So there's a lot of words, terminology, medical madness, but these ones I think are the most important ones. Activation, and that's what mast cells do when they encounter something they perceive as a dangerous threat. They get activated. And what it means to be activated, they degranulate. This is the words. They crumble. And mediators are chemicals that activated mast cells pump into the body, hundreds and hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of them. And histamine, we hear a lot about histamine, but that's only one of them when they start degranulating, when they're crumbling. And receptors it's good to think of them as doors. On every single cell in our body, we have receptors with their doors, and they let things in. And it's specifically, they let in the molecules for everything. And I just wrote out caffeine, sugar, salt, nicotine, histamine, ginger, chocolate, everything that we encounter and take into our bodies. In order for it to get into our bodies, it has to go through the door. There needs to be a receptor for it. And that's what enables those molecules to then interact with our body. And the other word that comes up a lot is MCD that I use, which is mast cell disorder or mast cell disorders, because it's easier sometimes to put MCD than always writing mast cell disorder, mast cell disorder. So here's what I was just talking about, mast cell activation basically in 4 steps. Mast cells, they encounter some kind of what they perceive as a threat or a possible danger. And in fractions of a second, they're sensitized and on alert, and bang, they're activated. And what it means when a mast cell is activated, it means it starts to degranulate and crumble. And when it does that, step 3 is mediators, which are chemicals and molecules and things in our body. They pump out those hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of different mediators, and that the mediators flood our bodies. Naughty bird, I'm sorry. The receptors hit the mast cells. Each mediator, like I mentioned chocolate, there's a chocolate receptor that's only for chocolate, and only chocolate can go through it. So for every single mediator that we have, that our mast cells, when they're degranulating, pump into our system, there is a door for it. There is a specific mediator receptor for that mediator. And that's how they get in through those receptors. But it's important to know that it's very specific. So when we have a mast cell reaction, it isn't just histamine that's causing the reaction. Histamine causes certain reactions. Tryptase causes certain reactions. So knowing that, I've listed some there because there were so many. Just some basic mediators based on the commonness of the reaction. So if a person, just know that all of the mediators are pumping out at once, but we may notice some people will break out in hives, other people won't. Some people will have respiratory problems, other people will have GI issues, somebody else could have bone pain. It's different what we focus on. We tend to focus on that what we're feeling most intensely. If we're really having problem breathing, that's going to be forefront of not paying attention to me, like I want to continue breathing. So, but knowing that the histamine does with the skin stuff, hives and flushing and some swelling and itching, and with respiratory things, the coughing and wheezing, these are things that histamine. But then leukotrienes, the shortness of breath and the airway inflammation. So if you're experiencing, this is just as an example, both of those, that means histamine's hitting and you're experiencing what's happening with the leukotrienes. And if you're having flushing, that's the prostaglandins. So it's a storm of this stuff happening, and the brain fog is there. So it you can look over these because it's I picked ones that they're involved in pain. Here are the ones that are involved in how we respond to stress. And like the VGF nerve growth factor is about chronic pain and our ability, our brain plasticity, that's our ability for our brain to change, to learn new ways of doing things, create new neural pathways. And that's about learning and memory and depression, and that this is all impacted and affected by mediators hitting our bodies. So if we're feeling any of these things intensely, finding interventions and strategies to help to start out physically blocking those receptors, blocking those doorways, will bring down the intensity of, hopefully bring it down, of what we're experiencing in our reactions. So it's very, very important to remember that mast cell disorders are physical, and the symptoms and reactions we experience, even though some of them can be intensely emotional, they can include suicidal ideation, despair, depression, agitation. And it's not that we don't feel these things for emotional reasons and psychological reasons, but there's also this whole world of experiencing these things that are completely and utterly physical, and they're happening because of this process with mast cells going on in the body. And recognizing that we are reacting to being exposed to something, to an incitant, to a trigger. And if you can remove the incitant, remove the trigger, then the reactions can come down and they can actually stop. That's the goal, is to have them come down and stop, and to not have us be so physically unwell to that degree from them. And there are a lot of triggers, incitants. So, and it's when you think it was interesting to think about that with mast cells, and in a mast cell disorder like MCAS, the mast cells are behaving inappropriately, and the messages that they're sending are kind of askew, and they're hyper, and they're responding to everyday things that they shouldn't be responding to, as if they're horrible toxins, as well as to more toxic ones, as if all substances and everything that we encounter, everything we put in our mouths to eat, every single pill we take, everything, no matter what it is, everything is being reacted to in this very similar way by our mast cells. And here is a process that our body has to keep us safe from real threats to our bodies. But it's almost like this system itself becomes it becomes itself a danger because it's out of whack. So that everything that we can do to try and stabilize these reactions, which includes how we maintain our external environment, will do nothing but help us feel better. So for our talk today, it becomes important to think about what we can do about the triggers and how we can remove them. That's the place, from our space to create that safe haven. So what is home. Home means a lot of things to a lot of different people. And it can be, I think these are a little futuristic things. Some of it, it's what, there's a part of it, it's how we use space, how we share it, the and natural environment that it's in. This one's by the ocean. I love the ocean. This one's in the woods. It's just something to think about, like what is home? There's that physical structure. And then this one, I kind of liked it because at least around where I live, everything's become like horrible, toxic plastic fences everywhere. And they're tearing down lovely homes and building these awful monstrosities. So there's construction, there's fumes, there's all of this stuff. And I just really wish I could find that flying car and just out of here and find somewhere else to be that isn't so toxic. So I kind of like that picture. So home is, there's that emotional piece of what it is for us inside. It's security, and what it should be: security, safety, a place to retreat, shelter from the storm, comfort, nurturing. And there's also the objective part of it. It's the structure itself. It can be a house, a room, an apartment, mobile homes, condo. I have a friend building a yurt in Vermont. It's just, which is like another lovely kind of way of occupying space. It's whatever it means to us. And it's a place where we go to recharge and our batteries and to regroup and to rebuild and all the things that we need that nurture us, and where we welcome others, our friends and partners and colleagues and family and pets. It's where we share and kind of where we radiate from. It means a lot in our worlds, our home. And we don't always think about it, but because we have lots of relationships in our lives with food, clothes, places, with each other, we also have a relationship with our home, but it starts from so much of it starts from our relationship with ourselves. And so in looking at home and self, we have this relationship with the natural and the built environments. And the natural environments are the ones that, like forest, nature, the ones that occur naturally. And the built environments are literally that, ones that humans have built. We live in relationship with them, good or bad. And it's also important that we understand that we also live in relationship with our mast cell disorders. And I'll just read the slides. Mast cell disorders impact every aspect of our lives and all of our choices. Every day, as we put the absolute essentials we need to have in place to support our health at the forefront of everything we do, we still live at the mercy of the behaviors of others over which we have no control. And we can look at things externally. There's pollution, all the things happening outside that I was just talking about, like the fences, the construction, all of these events. And then more within our worlds and the people who we spend and share our lives with, and also work with, medical professionals. It's more that not everybody will understand. Not everybody will support us in the way that we need to be supported. Not everyone will be cooperative, where, friends, people who you may share living spaces with, partners, and because not everybody will accommodate things the way that we need to have them be for our health. So the most important thing becomes know thyself, that we need to know who we are in relationship, in friendship with ourselves, and also about our triggers, our reactions, and the health needs that we need to have in place to not get worse. Because really it's up, but how can we not make ourselves worse, and what can we do to support lowering that baseline of reactivity and feeling better? So learning triggers and learning reactions is vital. Avoidance is still one of the most primary treatment strategies and interventions for managing mast cell activation symptoms in our health, but it's only one piece of things. And it's like we do need to have a toolbox with multiple tools so that we can do things all at the same time, because it's not just avoidance. It's avoidance plus doing these other strategies and following and maintaining everything else. And again, it's very individualized. What'll work for me isn't going to work the same way for some person B, isn't going to work the same way for person C. But if we all strive and work into getting those different tools and filling up that toolbox with things that work for us, we are better able to support our health. It can be really hard, that first bulleted item, identifying your specific reactions with their specific triggers can be extraordinarily difficult when it's this storm of reacting, and reactions are so high and you're feeling so not well. How do you tease it apart? And that's absolutely valid, because it's just like this overwhelm of symptoms that it's where do you even go? So sometimes with a lot of things, it isn't about doing the whole thing all at once. That's overwhelming, but doing it a piece at a time in smaller steps. And so some strategies, think of them as the smaller steps. Food as medicine, our food choices are huge. Thinking about and learning about circadian rhythms and how to support that, because research has found that mast cells have their own circadian clock. And then the medications, I know taking medications can be problematic. That can be another conversation we'll have. We can do a more of a deep dive into that on another day. But just understanding that medication does have its place as one of the tools in our toolbox. And the most common ones doctors prescribe tend to be like cromolyn sodium, H1 receptor blockers like Benadryl, things like that. H2 receptor blockers, which is famotidine, which is Pepcid and Zantac, those kinds of things. And this is not, I'm not giving medical advice. I'm just giving information. Always talk to your doctor. And things, another tool for the toolbox, exercising, because we can retrain our mast cells to not give that signal, degranulate. The world has come to an end. But most importantly, with all of this stuff, is educating ourselves and keeping learning, just being here today and learning about what mast cells are about in your body, what your reactions are, your triggers, because you are the, and always will be the expert in you and how to best support you. Everything changes when you have a mast cell disorder. This is what we've kind of been looking at. I mean, we're aware of that every second of every day. And just because things change and change so rapidly sometimes within hours of the same day and things, that doesn't mean that we suddenly don't need shelter, nurturance, comfort, safety, place to retreat, companionship, healing, home. And even just using the word, this is about a safe haven, because I like looking at dictionary stuff, but it's a place of safety and refuge, especially looking at it through the lens of having a mast cell disorder. It's like, what does safety mean? What does that mean for you, for each one of us individually? And I especially like the place offering favorable opportunities and conditions. And I think that the way that was phrased is another way to think about it. In how we set things up in our days and in our world, are we creating and extending and stabilizing favorable opportunities and conditions for us to be in and for our health? So this is creating your safe haven at home. Where do you even begin? And some days it feels like this. It's like it's everywhere, it's everything, it's chaos. And I can't deal with this. I feel awful. I can't handle any of this. What do I do? How do I make this happen? And when we're thinking safe haven, we're thinking about our home, apartment, the space within the dwelling. You also need to think about that actually safe haven starts in your neighborhood, wherever you live. And so it helps to think about neighborhood through the lens of mast cell disorders. When you're thinking about what are potential triggers, because if you can identify the triggers and yes, connect them with the reactions, but start identifying the triggers, then you can more effectively use things like avoidance. You can more effectively target with maybe food interventions, things to think about. Trash pickup day. That's a really nasty day in my world. I'm like, okay, this is trash. I'm just going to hide and not go out today because it's too toxic outside and I'll just make myself sicker. So if there's anything that I needed to do on trash day, which is a Tuesday where I live, I just do it on Friday or another day. I'm not going to go out there because it's too toxic. The trash cans, they're just fuming, and things that are decaying and bacteria are triggers for mast cells. Painting, and we think maybe closer to home, like painting in our immediate environment. Painting on a house 2 streets down if they're doing work it's in the air, and it can still cause, you can be like, why am I feeling lousy today? I'm not, I'm staying on top of everything. And it could be one of those things that you don't know about, have no control over, and that they're doing down the street. The same with paving and road work, construction, and especially they're doing a lot of renovation work, like I mentioned here, but I'm sure it's not just here, that involves like demolishing houses and rebuilding this, and depending on the season, and the landscapers coming, and landscapers and pesticide, then this in the winter with snow blowers. But all of these things, if you have an awareness that these are going to impact you, then you can try and set things up differently in your days and what you need to do to avoid them. So yeah, things like on people's houses, they have the vents, which you just smell laundry soap. And not just cooking fumes, but also sometimes people, now that it's getting the fall and the winter, and people use their fireplaces and the chemical logs, and that's just pumping it out into the air. And those can be really troubling and problematic for some people. But just having this awareness, because sometimes it can be scary to be having this storm of reactions to go, where is this coming from? Why am I feeling this? What's going on? Oh my God, oh my God. When you can figure out, it's like, it isn't changing what you're feeling, but it's changing how you're holding it and how you're managing your anxiety and stress, to be able to go, oh, I bet this is this going on, and I can do this to support the mast cells not degranulating a little, maybe. So I'm using a little bit of thinking and terminology of landscape. So, and just because how I think it helps to be able to separate what's going on with a safe haven. So you're looking first at the hardscape of home. And hardscape is a landscaping design term, and it's the solid, non-living element. So it's the structure of the building, it's the streets, it's the things, because they're paved. It's all of these hardscapes. They're about the built environment, and they're going to be triggers. The materials used to create the building, your apartment building, your house, the walls, the ceilings, the heating, all of these things. Painted surfaces, anything that's painted will off-gas more in the heat. These are and plastics. Plastics can be such a culprit, and there are so many things that are plastic. And then there are residual chemicals. There are things that are like, if you have windows that let in drafts, you're letting in toxic air from the outside that's maybe some degree of bothersome or triggering for your symptoms, as can heating systems within a building. And we all know about cleaning products, I'm sure. But then also how frequently the hardscape is cleaned, it's always that it makes a difference. It's always better if you can vacuum and clean and just to get toxins out of circulation. But in doing that, you're getting them up in the air. It's a trade-off, and then how one physically feels at any point in time. But just knowing that these are elements that are going to be adding to the total load of toxicity and triggers that you'll be reacting to, and thinking about ways in your life that'll work to try and maintain them. Have this awareness that reactions are sometimes coming from the outside in the neighborhood, and aren't literally within your space. There is it's called the Wellness and Environment Assessment, and it's an assessment of how different areas and factors in your life can be impacting your health, and specifically about your mast cell stuff. And it's not a medical diagnosing tool. You can do it yourself as a self-assessment, or you can have a healthcare person administer it. But it gives real, authentic information about each person who completes it, and a history about their exposures to environments, chemicals, substances, and materials to which they may react in their lives, the reactions themselves, the way the symptoms present themselves, how severe they can be, and the impact of them. And it's in 3 assessment areas: exposures and triggers, reactions and symptoms, and a health and wellness history, what that impact is on each person's life. And what this, and sometimes seeing it just put there, arranged in sections on a piece of paper, it can help in it. People have shared with me that even though they're living the reactions and living the day-to-day of it, it really helped them to see, oh wow, because everything is scaled on a 0 to 10. of how intensely you're impacted by it. To see, oh, okay, this area of things really bothers me, even though I know it bothers me much more than I realized. And in seeing that, it's another way of looking, going, what can I do to minimize my exposures to these areas and these triggers? And that with the goal of bringing down severity of reactions. And this applies very much to setting up that safe haven at home, that little bubble of safety. I don't know, sometimes we need the bubble to keep us safe, and other times it's really about how we manage needing to be in that safe haven space and what we need to do to be able to safely and healthfully spend time outside of it and live our lives, because we don't want to be living our lives in a bubble like that. But I still thought that was a kind of cool picture. So when you go from outside to inside your home, that's crossing that threshold on your doorway. We're all carrying residual chemicals from everywhere we've been, on ourselves, in our hair, on our clothes, on everything we're carrying. And I think it's really important to pay attention to that, because it's absolutely impacting how you feel right then in the moment. And also, everybody leaves some of their residual chemicals on the furniture, the floors, the items in a room. Other people bumping into you, just being next to you, from everywhere you go and everything you touch. So when you think about that, when you're thinking about, and your safe haven can be, if you live alone, it's easier to have it be your whole apartment or house. But when it's a shared space, it might just be one room or two rooms or something like that. But within those spaces that you've designated to be the safe haven, you have to have this awareness of what you're wearing and what you are bringing into it, just physically on your body, just from having been somewhere, and not making choices to not bring those into your safe haven. So things that have residual chemicals, bath soap, shower gel, shampoos, conditioners, deodorants, and all personal care products, your clothing and other people's clothing, just from walking by you and walking in the grocery store, they're following you. The fabrics themselves, how they're cleaned, including like dry cleaning. Some people are very active to dry cleaning, where people have been and the clothing has been. Motor vehicles, car trees. Oh, I hate car trees. Sitting on furniture, being in, just touching other things outside. If you're able to ride public transportation, that's a residual chemical nightmare. So strategies for handling that is, if you're able to designate, like when you first walk in the door, have a hamper or something, you can actually take off your clothes, everything that you wore outside, and not walk them through your living quarters. Just put them in the hamper, take everything off. You have something there you can change into, and go straight and take a shower. And it's not always possible, but if you can, because you're washing things off of all those residual chemicals off of you, out of your, especially out of your hair and off your skin, and then you can move more freely into what you're putting together and what you've designated as a safe space for you. So you're minimizing the residual chemicals that you're bringing into your living space to help bring down reactions. So yeah, mast cell disorder aware habits, just getting into this new habit of thinking of things can definitely help with that sort of effort of bringing down the reactions and their severity. So this is talking about what I've just kind of puts it on a page there about how individualized it is and how important it is to be able to carve out the safe haven using mast cell disorder informed choices, so that we can work, strategically on feeling better. When you're inside your house or apartment, some strategies, some people might need to, for instance, especially if it's in an apartment where there's lots of times there's a hallway and people are coming and going, and other people are opening the doors from their apartments and into, so it's just a frenzy and a heyday of chemicals just everywhere. Sometimes people have covered the cracks in the door frame with aluminum foil, just kind of masking taped it up, and because it's non-porous and it's a pretty good barrier against toxins. It's not 100% perfect, because we still need to go in and out the doors, but it's a way of, while you're home, of keeping some of the toxic chemicals out. Another big one when you're creating a safe haven is, and this one's not always easy, is we have to get rid of things. It doesn't literally mean we have to throw them away or give them to the thrift store, but we need to have them not be in our safe haven space because we're reacting to them. And it can be hard because we get attached to our things. We have relationships with our stuff. But furniture is a big one because we need some kind of furniture and we can react to it. So some people are able to just be in a space for a minute. And if they kind of pay attention to where does it feel like it's coming from, this wave of thing that's making me nauseous or dizzy or whatever the reaction may be, people, if you start paying attention a little bit, sometimes you can get a direction on that. But other times it's hard when our reactions are ramped up so high because there's so many things and we're feeling so unwell to really go, it's this little thing over there that's bothering me when it's everything in the whole universe is bothering me. So it still ends up being a place to consider starting, removing furniture and removing things to start to just down to a minimum, get it down to a little bit of a more space of possible quietness of reactions, and then go from there. Another suggestion is washing. We don't always think of washing furniture, washing the chairs, but baking soda with or without some vinegar and some warm water, that can wipe down. I know, like when I get a new computer or something like that, I use vinegar and warm water and I just wipe down, I wipe down all the wires, and that really helps make it be more tolerable. All the cords and stuff, I just wipe them all down with vinegar and warm water on them. And that's been, does it make it stop giving off fumes? No, but it makes it a lot more bearable. It makes me less sick from being around things I have to be around, like the computer. Using an air purifier, some people react to machinery being on. I found a friend of mine is actually going to build one, how to make your own filtration box, like using a box fan, or so it's much more not just toxic less, but also you can use materials that you're kind of okay with and not reacting to. And if you want, I can forward the link to those websites for how to do that, because it's not that hard. I was really psyched. I just recently stumbled upon that. But if you're able to bring down the toxins or improve the air quality in the space that you're in, that will also help. And also just thinking of what's in your closet with the same, what's under the sink with the same goal of having to get rid of, literally really having to remove from your safe haven living space things to which you react. So it's looking again in the bedroom, furniture, carpets, curtains, clothing, your bed sheets and pillowcases, and the pillows themselves, and cushions and plastics, all of these things throughout where you live, or especially where you really want that safe space to be, as things that need to be replaced by things that you don't react to or don't react to as intensely. And that can include your brand of toothpaste, the toilet paper brand you use, plants. I have to get rid of all my plants. Oh, it made me sad, but it's like, I'd rather not be sick than plants out, So there are things that are making those changes are not always easy, but it's also what are our priorities? And I know our priorities are feeling well, or as well as we can. Plastic hangers, baskets, hampers, all of these things that we don't think twice about can add to everything. Think of it as if everything that we have is giving off lovely puffs of beautiful, like pink or pale yellow or light lavender puffs of beautiful smoke throughout the day and in all the rooms in our house. And it puffs and puffs and puffs and puffs and puffs, and it just puffs it into the air. How long do you think it takes before the air starts turning dark? It becomes hard to see and hard to breathe. Well, everything that we have is like that. And those puffs, those are the things that we react to. And sometimes just having one, it's manageable. We have 5 of them and it becomes unmanageable. And being able to free up the space in that kind of way is important. This is a page. It's a page on my website. And I have listed a bunch of stuff. It's a bunch of natural and organic options for the home, cooking, clothing, gardening, and personal care. The link is there if you want to check it out. Again, it's just for information. Sometimes it's like, well, where do I go? Where do I find? What do I do? And there's some information there that maybe it can spark an idea or a direction or somewhere how you can support yourself in a particular area that's specific for what your needs are. Another troubling take on things is that each person's triggers and reactions can be very, very different. And different from person to person. Just to say, yes, plastics are, for an example, plastics can be very triggering. What they may trigger, the reactions they may trigger in one person can be radically different from what a second person feels. And a third person might be fine with most plastics. It really depends. But this piece of it, thinking about new versus existing, what you already have, is a very, very important aspect. It's an important way to look at things, because sometimes, I mean, we need clothes. there are things that we absolutely have to have. And it is a trade-off, the choice. It's like, which is worse for anything? Keeping the one you have or getting a new one? And sometimes it's really hard. Is it getting the answers to that involves potentially making ourselves feel more sick by going and entering spaces like we're our own guinea pig or our own canary, and to the coal mine, just going, is this going to bother me? And having to touch it, because some people, they can touch something and pretty quickly, in seconds, they'll start to react. So it's like, nope, can't do that. No, can't do that. And it becomes this balancing act of how much I can do one day and then wait a couple of weeks and do it again, to not overtax your system, because the concept of total load, I feel, is real. It's not just what's happening in this moment that what you're having a reaction to. For example, I went to the grocery store, came back, oh, it must be the store, I'm feeling really lousy. And yeah, it's probably the store is part of it, but then it's also what you've done for the past week is contributing to the load, because it takes time for our systems to calm down, especially if the onslaught of toxins is continuing and perpetual kind of going on. So part of my saying that is that be patient. It does take time, but it can happen. But this piece about new versus existing, that's something that hits a lot of areas of our lives. For example, something as simple as pots and pans. Some people can't handle the metals. If you can't find a traditional brand of pots and pans, Corel Visionware, a lot of people have positive reactions with those because they're not metal, they're made out of glass. Another big one that, and then a lot of this is from feedback and conversations that I have with people and also my own experiences. Refrigerators are huge. We need them. And it seems the interiors and the plastics that they're made out of and the other materials have just gotten more toxic over the years. So several people have shared with me that they have been much more successful in getting a commercial refrigerator and a commercial freezer, like the one in grocery stores or in convenience stores. Either the doors just, it's all glass. Sometimes they have coconut, but whatever, or the doors slide. And and in getting those type of refrigerators and freezers, because there's so much less plastic and stuff, especially the plastic in the interiors. Another thing is clothing. And I said clothing, but clothing is a big fabric. Think of everything that has fabric on it, because we can react to the fabric itself, what it's made out of, to the dyes and what it's colored with. There's also so many fabrics are treated with chemicals that are flame retardant as just a matter of course. Things that so it's not just simple as just 100% cotton, because that's different. So it is, everybody's cotton is different. The factories are different where they're made, all the residual chemicals that are on there and how they're shipped and how they're packaged. It does make things problematic, but once you find something, people have, and I have good luck with LL Bean with some of their bed sheets. It's just finding the things that work, and it's, I know these are things that I'm sure but really looking at them solely through the lens of, am I going to react to this or not? And that needs to be the deciding thing. It's not like, oh, but it's nice, or oh, but this is a pretty color, or oh, I really want to, it's going to be, am I reacting to this or not? And if I'm reacting to it, it can't be in my safe space, because then it's no longer a safe haven. Because the goal of any safe haven is to have it be as without triggers as it can be. So another one is a choice of car. And I've spoken with an allergist and who told me that they recommend that people not buy a new car and instead buy a car that's at least 8 years old, because of how long it takes for the toxins and all the stuff to air out, to off gas from a new car. Things like formaldehyde, which is in like the upholstery and insulation, and so it's still there, and it's still a carcinogen, but it's being pumped out into the air. So that was the number he said, was at least 8 years old. And another area of concern is mattresses and beds and box springs. Those are all treated here in the US. It's by law. They're treated with flame retardant chemicals. And a lot of people with mast cell disorders react to those chemicals. So getting a bed is really challenging. And also, I don't know other places, but here in the US, they've been becoming more and more strict about buying and selling used beds. So just to share, futons can always be a good alternative. I know that it's not the same kind of bed image that we're used to, but they're usually made out of 100% cotton. And there are several futon companies that have shared with me, and if you ask them, I don't want one that has the chemicals, what they sell that you can buy, no problem. It's still the cotton fill, but it also has woven into it wool, because they found that wool is a natural fire retardant element to have in there. But some people are also allergic and reactive to wool. So here in the US, there's a few of the futon companies, they will make for you a futon mattress that does not have the wool and does not have the chemicals. But in order to do that, they need a written prescription. They need a prescription from your doctor to make the bed, to create that bed for you, but they can do it. Just so that that's an option there. And I wish that there was some just concrete, this is what you do. Here's what you do to make the safe haven. That would be nice if life was that simple. But it's really more about knowing you and your reactions and how you need your world to be for you. And we're not always in a headspace or the one that we have. We tend to be very critical of ourselves, and we think that to put ourselves first and foremost in those ways, that somehow we're being overly demanding or horribly selfish, or all sorts of critical adjectives that we can think of, when really what we're being is what we are the only people can be and do for us, is putting our health first and taking care of us. And we need to do that. And the idea of home, there's a book. It's not a mast cell book, has nothing to do with mast cells. It's called The Poetics of Space. And it was written by Gaston Bachelard. And in this book, it was written like 1960, 1959. It's nothing new. It's not a new book. And it's a thick one, but it's a lovely book. And he's writing about home and space, and the meaning that we give to the spaces that are home and how we inhabit them, and thinking of that safe haven. It's absolutely about the physical structure of the room and how we make it mast cell appropriate for us. It's also about what we put into it, the furnishings, the decorations, the things that we need and want, and how our comfort things, that those items. But then it's also about, in our heads and in our hearts, how we are in experiencing and entering and being in this space that we're creating, and what is it about. And this inevitably involves our relationship with ourselves and our relationship with our mast cell disorder. And so many times, myself included, I'm never preaching. I'm always, I'm in the trenches with everybody else, but, we're so, we're so much harder on ourselves than we are on our friends and the people we care about. Because we know if someone came to us saying, I'm feeling this, or I'm thinking this, we'd be like, all of the nurturing, comforting things that we do not give to ourselves. And I think that we forget that the relationship that we live in with ourselves is one of friendship. And how can we support this friend of ourselves? Because we know how to support our other friends. And sometimes thinking about it in that way can be a helpful shift in how we're approaching not just being in the space of a room, but it being in the space of ourselves and our lives, because a mast cell disorder is something that isn't going away. And it's changed every single nook and cranny about how we are, who we are, and what we do. But it is not the thing that defines us. So the relationship that we have with the disorder, it's important that we tease apart. Do I have a relationship that's a little antagonistic? So, well, some days I totally loathe and despise mast cell disorders. Yeah, of course, but overall, what is that relationship? And it needs to be with an understanding that it's something we deal with, and it's huge. But it isn't who we are, and that is important. And that's a big part of what you're creating when you're creating a safe haven, is a safe place for you to be who you are. And if you start there with supporting you in these ways, and that the mast cell disorder is going to be keeping us company for a lot of years still to come. And what can we do to be like, okay, I want my life to not be, and fill in the blank. And the strategies that you can put into place will all be helping to create that safe haven. So I like this quote. I thought it was a nice place to kind of pause a little bit. Take care of you. Everything else can politely wait its turn. And that's also good to remember while you're thinking about, what do I need to do? And some of it is literal housekeeping and removal of things. And what about the clothes? The same applies. Clothes, shoes, if you react to it, it needs to not be in your world right now. But I know, and I'm not saying this is going to happen with everybody, but it was when I was first hit with this, I got rid of everything I own. I had to, everything. I was reacting to everything anyway. So it was just like everything. And I had so much plastic and all my fleece, because fleece is what? Plastic. Polyester is plastic. Nylon is plastic. It was, get it out. My silverware, my dishes. Oh my gosh. That was in 2012, 2000, around there, and 2013. And it was years later, but I found I could reuse, like, some of these things could re-enter my life again, because symptoms had calmed down, system had calmed down. I looked the learning curve. I put so many things in place. Am I saying this is going to happen to you? I wish I had that crystal ball for myself. I would share it with you. But if you do these strategies and put them into place and bring down your reactions, you do feel better. You do feel better. If there's not so many triggers, there's not so many incitements that you're exposing yourself to, then you're going to be feeling better, because you're not going to be reacting. And yeah, so I've found old friends and brought them back into the house a little bit, not everything, just a couple of things, but that made a difference. So I think that's a place to pause.